Good morning, everybody. It's always such a joy to be here. It's good to see you all. And thank you so much, Roz, for that beautiful song that was so heartfelt. And Reverend Juanita, what perfect, I'm looking up, like she's like the internet is up there. There. So Reverend Juanita, thank you for those beautiful words. I'm always heartened by the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And, I was thinking in terms of this monthly theme about authenticity. Because, in truth, the word authentic and the word author are the same root. So when we talk about authenticity or being an authentic individual, it's really about being the author of our own life. And I don't know about you, but what I've discovered about the spiritual path comes down to this, which is, looking at where I have outsourced the authority of my life and how I begin to draw it back in and call it back in. And the thing about that is, and I think every artist probably knows this, is that whatever your art is, whether it be music or painting or writing or sculpting, that really true art can only come from telling the truth. Being authentic. And so I kind of want to explore that a little bit, but I want to start by an adventure that I had maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with my partner. We had gone to Costco on a Saturday afternoon. And, Costco, the place where you save more than you earn. And we're there. And the thing about Costco, right, is, and again, maybe I'm speaking personally, but I bet I'm not, is I don't think I've ever gotten out of Costco for less than $200. It just doesn't happen, right? Because you have to buy toilet paper for the next 6 months or whatever it is that you're buying. So anyway, that was the beginning of the adventure. So shopping and doing whatever we're doing, and then we're off to being in the line, and then about maybe three people ahead of me, there was this older gentleman, and here's where the story becomes interesting for me. This older gentleman that to describe him would be probably my age, and long hair, kind of a hippie. You're laughing just because somebody my age goes to Costco? And he was with another young man who was about 40 years younger than him. If I was to make up a story, I would say that it looked like his grandson. But here's the point, is I don't know. So there they are ahead of us, and I'm looking, and he is pulling out of his backpack baggies of nickels, dimes, quarters, pennies. The gods as my witness, he is paying his Costco bill in baggies of coins, quarters, nickels, dimes. And there's two checkers, I guess they're checkers at Costco, clerks, whatever they're called, and they're frantically, doing this, trying to count these coins out. And to avoid, the horror of the thing, my partner and I turn around, and we had a lovely conversation with a woman who was also running late, and as it was proceeding, we were eyeing each other's baskets, like, well, you got wine, I got tequila, you got cheese, maybe we'll have a little party here. But anyway, we had a lovely thing. But here's the point of the story, is whatever I tell myself about that individual and the young man who was with him, who looked, in my opinion, apparently abashed, it's a story, because I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue why he's paying with coins or not, or what the situation is, or anything. Reverend Juanita just quoted Thoreau, and one of my favorite lines from Thoreau is where he says, it doesn't matter what you look at, or what he says, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. Because what we see, the old saying, what we're looking at, we're looking with. What we see is the sum total of all of our experiences. Every book we've ever written, every person we've ever dated, every piece of wisdom we have garnered in life, and every experience, because we are sort of the sum total of all these different kinds of experiences, and these experiences create the perception on how we look at things and create stories about what they are without knowing anything about the situation, right? Maybe this is only me and it doesn't apply to you, but I think about that, and for me, I'm not sure who said it. I think Philo, the early first century philosopher, the Egyptian philosopher, said it, and I've heard it said other ways, but it's to the effect of this: be kind, because everybody is fighting a great battle. Be kind, because we just don't know about that person who cut us off. We just don't know about that guy in the store with nickels, dimes, and quarters. We just don't know personally about the people that walk in my neighborhood without their dogs on leashes, or whatever the case may be. We just don't know, but we make up something about what it is, and then we go on a hunt to find evidence to make that right. Yeah? So the practice of living authentically is to live in the authorship and to write the story of our life based on something other than I am separate, I am alone, they're doing it to me, whatever the case may be, but maybe with I am guided by compassion. I'm open to amazement and joy. I don't really know what's going on. There's a Buddhist teacher that I like. Her name is Sharon Salzberg, and she says something really lovely. It's kind of almost the mantra of my life. She says, we set forth, we struggle, we lose our balance, and then realizing it, we begin again. We set forth, we struggle, we lose our balance, and then realizing that, we begin all over again. I was talking to a classmate, Reverend Lauren there, and I was thinking, in 20 years in ministry, that's my whole ministry. I get a great idea, I go forward, I lose my balance, I lose my way, I realize it, and I start all over again. Really, it's my whole life. And I think sometimes, one of the great teachers for me on this is the GPS in my car. Because if I'm spacing out and I have the directions and I miss a turnoff, all it says is, take the next available U-turn, or it doesn't say, like people in my life, how could you have done that? Now everything is ruined. You always do those kinds of things. You're a loser. It just simply says, you've lost your way, turn around, and get back with the program. And that's the spirit of the divine. Because if we look at the divine as the experience of unrelenting love, it is not looking in any way to trip us up, to punish us, to lead us astray. It is simply luring us into the greater experience of how our life can be led. And if me, find myself in the weeds and lose the plot, just regroup right where you are in this moment. That's how it's done, without making up stuff about what you know nothing about. My partner and I, I tell her this because she says, Guy, you can be righteous. So anyway, and I say other things to her. But anyway, but I lovingly call her Mrs. Kravitz because we have these neighbors across the street. And a couple weeks ago, there was trucks coming and going and doing things, and she's sitting there going, they're moving. Oh, no, she's moving in. They're moving out. And I'm like, you know who Mrs. Kravitz is? Yes, Bewitched, There's a witch over there. And so that's kind of us. When we're looking out the window, so when we correct ourselves, we say, Mrs. Kravitz, you don't know what you're talking about. But there's this line from this beautiful poetry in the Hebrew Bibles in the book of Ecclesiastes, which is just this lovely thing. And it says this, it's after that whole thing to every season, to every turn there's a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. And then it goes on to say, God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has set eternity in the human heart without enabling them to discover what God has done from the beginning to the end. And I was thinking, I kind of get the part where it's all beautiful and everything's wonderful. And then there's this part where it says, without enabling them to discover what God has done from the beginning to the end. What? What do you mean you can't discover? You don't know. So I started thinking about that, and it reminded me of something from the book of Corinthians of St. Paul, where he talks about how we look through a glass darkly. And I love that. And probably you, like me, when I had first heard that line, we see through a glass darkly, you get the part where it says, well, yeah, and then he says, and then in time else we'll see clearly. And I kind of think, well, that's all about consciousness, right? I don't see the whole picture now, but if I do the right things and I say my prayers and I do my affirmations, it'll kind of be clear. And there's truth in that, but it's not really what Paul was saying. The word glass in Greek, and by the way, this was written in Greek, is asperion. And what that means, in essence, is a sort of an ancient mirror. And darkly, the word that is from enigma. So in other words, what Paul is saying is, we see in a mirror that is an enigma. Well, what does that mean? And this is the fun about the creative process of writing a talk or doing a study. It's just you go from like one rabbit hole to the next rabbit hole to the next rabbit hole. So it's kind of like, where's this going? What does this mean? And then I get an idea or an answer to it, and it's from St. Augustine. Good old moody, cranky, like I know anything about St. Augustine, right? There I go again, it's like I know anything about this. I know a few things about him, what he's revealed about himself, but really, again, be kind. Be kind, because everyone's fighting a great battle. But this is what Augustine, how he says it. He says, when we look in a mirror, what we see is an image of ourself. When I look into a mirror, what I'm seeing is an image, an imagination of myself. And so what Paul is saying here is, we see through a glass darkly. We see through the image of ourself that we project onto everything else. And in time, that becomes clear as we polish the mirror by practicing a level of curiosity about what is possible, instead of creating a story that is congruent with our way that we see the world and then finding evidence in it, right? Because I can give you all kinds of evidence about the guy with the coins, why he's doing it, how he's doing it, and whatever the story is. First of all, I don't know. Nobody in this room knows. No one knows except him and the young man that was with him. And second of all, what a waste of time for me to dwell on that. Certainly there are other things I can be thinking about. Like, how do I see things? How is this a reflection on where I am? The guiding principle in our life is our desire. You know, Dante says it so beautifully in the Divine Comedy when he talks about time is love. Because the thing that we spend time with is the thing that we love. And the thing that we love is what we become. And he would talk about, disordinate and consolate love, Are we loving the right thing wrongly or loving the wrong thing wrongly? Or, where do we spend the most time is what we are becoming. And so maybe it is incumbent upon us to look at what our desire is, because desire is not a bad thing. A misdirected desire can be a distracting thing. But what do we truly desire at the essence? And we know what that is because it's the thing we're spending most of our time with. And if we're worrying and fretting and judging, this is what we desire because it's making us write about a story that we tell ourselves about how we're all alone or we're out of control or whatever the case may be. But maybe, following the mystics, a contemplation on something deeper. So, Meister Eckhart, who was a 12th century mystic, writes this: "Your heart's desire will fill your mouth, your actions and your labor. You will know what you love by what you say, where you go, and what you do. Your heart's desire is easily revealed. You will know your heart's desire by what you love, by what you say, where you go, and what you do." It's not rocket science. It's calling back the authorship of our life, taking the authority of our life and directing it by maybe creating a new story. What I want to offer is each of us in this room today are here because there's a yearning within us. There's a yearning for unity, no doubt. But I think deeper than that, it's to awaken that divine spark within us. And what we say often is that the very essence, the very nature of that which has created all things is love. The self-givingness, or in Greek kenosis, that pouring forth of giving of itself to itself, through itself, as itself. And it stands to reason then that if love is the very essence of all that there is, nothing is separate, nobody is separate from it. As I often say, that the truest thing about each and every one of us is that we are the beloved. That's true for us, it's true for our neighbors, and it's true for our enemies. And so how do we cultivate that? So I want to offer in closing a meditation. And it's a meditation that comes from St. Paul. And again, if you hear that and you itch, you are telling yourself a story, because I'm guessing nobody here was around in first century Palestine that actually knew him or could say anything about him. So I'm going to offer this, but before I do, I just want to say one more thing, which is I'm doing a double header today. I am here this morning, and this afternoon I'll be at Namaste Center. And I won't be giving the same talk because that would be inauthentic. So let me offer this as a contemplation. And just all you have to do is just listen to it, breathe it in. If it feels comfortable to close your eyes, do so. If not, that's fine. If I speak in tongues of human beings and of angels, and I don't have love, I am a clanging gong or a clashing cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and I know all the mysteries and everything else, and if I have a complete faith that I can move mountains, but I don't have love, I am nothing. If I give away everything that I have and hand over my own body to feel good about what I have done, but I don't have love, I receive no benefit whatsoever. Love is patient. Love is kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep a record of complaints. It isn't happy with injustice, but is happy with the truth. Love puts up with all things, trusts in all things, hopes for all things, endures all things. Love never fails. As for prophecies, they will be brought to an end. As for tongues, they will stop. As for knowledge, it will be brought to an end. We know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, what is partial will be brought to an end. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, reason like a child, think like a child. But now that I have become a man, I have put an end to childish things. Now we see a reflection in a mirror. Then we will see face to face. Now I know partially, but then I will know completely, in the same way that I have been completely known. Now faith, hope, and love remain, these three, and the greatest of these is love. And let us make that our desire, where we spend our most time with. In doing so, we take the authorship of our life, and we are able to see each and every person as that reflection, giving them their authority. And then we are truly free. And then we create a world that works for all. Thank you for your kind attention.